It is 8 p.m. and here are our top stories. Boulder County clearing the way on the path to rebuilding.
I still have to see my house, sometimes what remains of it, and it's really upsetting.
A major legal hurdle out of the way so the actual obstacles can finally be removed.
We've been ready for weeks to remove this debris.
They paid to renovate, but their contractor walked out on the job. Now, a Colorado couple is out tens of thousands of dollars.
We don't have a lot of money. We're living off of Social Security. She really raked us over the coals.
Plus, if inflation and high prices are bleeding you dry, state lawmakers have a plan to keep your cash in your wallet.
This is really one of those small ways that we can save Coloradoans money.
Good evening, and thank you for watching Denver 7 News on Local 3. I'm Jacqueline Allen.
I'm Danny New. It's been nearly 3 months since the Marshall Fire destroyed more than 1,000 homes in Louisville, Superior, and Boulder County, and now the delayed debris removal can actually begin.
Finally, and today Boulder County cleared a legal hurdle, which means cleanup can finally get started. Here to explain is Denver 7's Micah Smith.
Today, members of Marshall Together, an organization made up of Marshall fire survivors who lost their homes in the disaster, say they're viewing the judge's decision with cautious optimism. Board member Tanya Samaru was in court today, and she says she's happy to hear that the preliminary injunction and temporary restraining order were denied. That means the long-delayed debris removal is closer to moving forward. But the fact the judge did not rule on the open meetings violation that led to choosing a debris removal contractor left her feeling worried.
I'm glad that the contract can begin, but I worry that the cloud of the litigation will still affect how it gets executed, whether the county and the cities are caught up with this or what. I'd rather that the cloud was cleared of all litigation and we could just move forward.
Samaru says every time she drives past the place where her house used to stand, she's re-traumatized. She just wants to clear her property and start again. But the plaintiff in this case, the organization demanding integrity and government spending, or DIGS, says that Louisville and the county of Boulder were never ready to physically start removing debris. So I asked Louisville City Council member Kyle Brown if this was true.
I would tell him that organization to come to our community, talk to our residents. Our community is ready, and our city government is ready, and our staff have been working 24/7 since this disaster to get our community ready. We've been ready for weeks to remove this debris.
Next, the judge will decide if the committee that chose the contractor to begin debris removal violated the open meetings law. The judge set another hearing for March 30th at 11 a.m. Reporting in Louisville, Micah Smith, Denver 7.
And we will stay on top of that. Fire victims have less than 2 weeks to apply for disaster assistance through Boulder County. The deadline is Thursday, March 31st, and this is for people whose homes were damaged or destroyed and for people displaced because of smoke or ash contamination. You can find a link to apply on Boulder County's website.
The BA.2 variant, sometimes known as stealth Omicron, has been detected in Denver. The strain is responsible for a rise in cases in Europe, Asia, and more recently, New York. That being said, the vaccine appears effective, and neither Denver's health department nor local experts seem especially worried about our ability to handle it.
A lot of people were infected with Omicron, and a lot of the Colorado population is immunized today on their vaccines. And so I think while there's still a lot of uncertainty, it seems reasonable to think that this is not going to lead to the same type of really disruptive event that Omicron created in January.
150 people were hospitalized in Colorado with COVID as of Wednesday. And I say Wednesday because a recent change has made that the only day of the week that the state will give an update on hospitalizations.
Several families in Colorado say they are out tens of thousands of dollars after a contractor took deposits for house projects, then closed up shop and made off with the cash.
Now they are suing to try to get their money back. Denver 7's Rob Harris spoke with 2 families impacted today. Rob, as we can imagine, it must have been an emotional year for them.
Yeah, absolutely, Danny. I mean, the families I talked to say they feel obviously taken advantage of. They feel a little embarrassed about this whole thing too, but what they tell me is they don't really know what else they could have done because they felt they did their homework on this before they put down their deposit. They had found Kelsey Lyons and her firm Kelsmac through an app called BuildZoom. Now, both families say they had several consultations and the construction projects they had planned for their houses. But after they paid their deposits, tens of thousands of dollars each, they stopped hearing from her and eventually got emails saying that Kelsmac had ceased operations and had obtained an attorney. Now, that message hit like a ton of bricks for Eve and Tom Harris, who sold their home to pay for an addition on their daughter's home that they plan to live in. Now, more than a year later, they're in an apartment and there's no end in sight.
Total betrayal of respect for elderly people, and she knew full well that we sold our property for a good price, and she was bound and determined to try to take it all away from us.
Now, both families I talked to today say that Kelsey Lyons has been tough to get a hold of since she closed up shop and they filed their lawsuits. I did message Kelsey on LinkedIn. I heard back from her, but she just told me she wouldn't comment on pending litigation. So this full story, plus the message they would want to tell her if she watches, that's tonight at 10 o'clock.
All right, thanks so much, Rob. For the first time since Russia invaded Ukraine, President Biden spoke today with Chinese President Xi. Last week, there were concerns China could supply Russia with military equipment. China is denying those reports, but the White House says the president made it clear on today's call that China supplying weapons would not be tolerated.
He also conveyed and described the implications and consequences if China provides material support to Russia.
The UN now estimates nearly 6.5 million Ukrainians have had to seek shelter in Ukraine during Russia's invasion. 3.2 million people have fled the country altogether.
With inflation and supply chain issues and gas prices, Coloradans are being asked a lot to pay for transportation these days.
And now state lawmakers are trying to find ways to help. Denver 7 political reporter Megan Lopez shows us how.
All it takes is a quick trip to the gas station to feel the pinch in your wallet. Gas prices have skyrocketed, and so have prices on just about everything else. Needless to say, it's not cheap to be a driver right now between supply chain shortages, inflation, and of course the crisis in Ukraine.
There are all these factors that we don't have control over.
But state lawmakers say there are ways they can help, like one bill to keep driver's license registration fees from increasing next year.
We're able to keep them at $30 when the national average is $40.
The registration fee was set to go up by $2. It'll cost the state $4 million to keep it at its current level.
This is really one of those small ways that we can save Coloradoans money.
And you know those cars you've seen driving around with expired tags? Well, there's another bill to increase the penalty on anyone who registers their car late. So how does that save you money?
The bulk majority of the costs then fall on fewer people that are actually following the rules, and that's not fair to the people who live here. This will mean real cost reduction immediately for everybody, because we're collecting more revenue that we're already owed.
In January,
now is not the time. Let's show people relief at the pump.
We also heard the governor talk about his plan to delay the implementation of fees from that big transportation law. You know, the one with the fees for gas, delivery, ride shares, and more. That bill's yet to be introduced, but for Speaker Alec Garnett,
I think when you look at the total package of what we're moving forward to save people money, it is over $100 million. That is a huge commitment.
It's really starting to weigh on people.
Republicans like Senator Ray Scott share the same goal of saving people money, but he says last year's transportation law wasn't anticipating this year's financial crunch.
Now we're back in a position saying, was it realistic? Did it really make any sense?
And he wants to make sure that the state isn't forgetting that its transportation system still needs funding. So he's looking for a middle road.
But we need to kind of set aside those partisan arguments, if you will, and have a real discussion and make some real sense out of exactly what we can do for immediate fixes and long-term fixes.
Because he says saving money is important, but it shouldn't come at the sake of safe roads. Megan Lopez, Denver 7.
All right, on top of the other transportation measures you heard Megan talking about, keep in mind the Keep Colorado Wild Pass. It will also kick in starting next January. That will add an additional $29 to your vehicle registration, but offer free admission to all state parks. The money will help with conservation efforts. You can opt out of it, you just have to remember to do it.
RTD has reached an agreement with union workers that immediately boosts operators to $24 an hour, and that rate will hit $26 by 2024. Today, RTD leaders were joined by union representatives who believe these raises will help retain staff and keep services on track. At the end of today's press conference, General Manager and CEO Deborah Johnson emphasized that RTD is hiring and is encouraging anyone who needs a job to apply. They're also offering a $4,000 hiring bonus for several frontline positions, including operators and mechanics.
Coming up at 8, housing prices are skyrocketing across the metro, but not all properties are equal.
Even in the same neighborhood, the same home is appraised lower when it is perceived as being owned by a black family versus a white family.
Plus, Coors Tours makes a comeback after a 2-year hiatus.
To bring people back in here to see people's faces as they come back to the tours and they get to sample the beers. There's nothing better than that.
Mild and dry for the weekend, but cold and snow coming by Monday.